After a disappointing ending to the 2024 campaign, the Falcons head into the offseason with a lot of questions that need to be answered. As far as the Super Bowl goes, the 1 seed in the AFC, the Las Vegas Raiders, defeated the 1 seed in the NFC, the New York Giants, 24-14. Josh Jacobs ended up being the MVP after a hell of a performance, and a really disappointing end to the season for the Giants as well. Jacobs rushed for 146 yards and a touchdown on 17 carries to lead the Raiders to victory. As far as yearly awards go, Josh Allen won MVP, Arthur Smith was the Coach of the Year, Offensive Player of the Year was Joe Mixon, Defensive Player of the Year was Nick Bosa, and the Offensive Rookie of the Year was quarterback Elijah Bass for the Eagles, and Jaron Friedman of the Cardinals won Defensive Rookie of the Year. The Falcons ended up firing defensive coordinator Jim Nichols and hired Lovie Smith, the former head coach of the Texans and Bears, as their defensive coordinator. They also had to replace offensive coordinator Henry Brock, who accepted the head coaching job with the Detroit Lions. They'll be replacing him with Timothy Morgan, who was the offensive coordinator for the Rams most recently. With these moves, the Falcons have decided to change their offense and defense, as the offensive playbook we'll be using for year 4 and beyond is the Rams offensive playbook, and they'll be using the defensive playbook for the Texans as well, meaning we'll be running a Tampa 2 moving forward. But now for the tough decisions. We decided to cut Jake Matthews in the offseason, who wasn't even starting at left tackle anyways. It'll save the Falcons $13 million in cap, while they also will accrue a little bit of a penalty as well in $5 million. But the $13 million that they'll save is very important for some of the moves that they would have to make. Grady Jarrett is another one who's a little bit tougher of a cut. He spent 10 years in Atlanta, and after a really down season, Falcons decided that they're going to cut him, save $16.25 million in cap, and accrue $4.13 million in total penalties. Now we head to re-signings, and Kyle Pitts really is the biggest person that the Falcons had to re-sign here, and I wasn't sure if he was going to accept a player-friendly deal, but the plan here was, if he didn't sign this deal, I was going to franchise tag him anyways, but he did accept the deal. So Kyle Pitts is now under contract for the next 5 years, and he's getting big money as well. The other big name player that the Falcons were looking to re-sign was Richie Grant, who is the starting free safety, and he's been a big part of the Falcons' defensive success over the past few seasons. And he and Derwin James have really developed into being one of the best safety tandems in the league. So there was no way I was going to let him go away. So the offer ended up being a player-friendly deal, and it's worth about $2.3 million in salary and $2.3 million in bonus per year. And I decided to give him that offer, and he accepted. So now it's time to bring back James Cook as well, who didn't really produce a whole lot, but I like what I saw from him in very limited playing time. But I didn't want to give him too much money, so I offer him a 1-year deal worth $2.3 million in salary and $1 million in bonus to be the backup to Ronald Jones, and he accepts. So the plan is we're going to utilize him a lot more this season than we did last year. With us moving to a 4-3 defense, the idea is to utilize Monty Rice a little bit more, and that means we are going to offer him a team-friendly deal to bring him back on a 1-year deal, but he decides that he wants to go test free agency, which is fine because we still do have Troy Anderson on the roster, and we can still sign other people as well. So next up, I do want to keep Mitchell Trubisky as the backup quarterback to Desmond Ridder. I felt like he did a pretty good job during preseason, and he also did a pretty good job in very limited playing time with the Falcons this year. So $2 million in salary, $1.1 million in bonus for just 1 year, and he accepts it. So the next guy that I wanted to bring back was Bill Johnson, who's a superstar dev, and I moved him to right outside linebacker to potentially start there in our new cover 2 defense. The problem is Bill Johnson is relatively unproven, so I offered him 1 year, $1 million in salary, $5,000 in bonus, and he decided to decline. So that sucks. We lose a superstar development player, but maybe we could bring him back in the offseason, or in free agency, I should say. And I also wanted to bring back Dane Cruikshank, who actually did contribute a little bit, but again, I lowballed him, and he decided he wanted to play for a new team this year. So I did want to bring back Glenn Mallard as well, but I wasn't going to offer him that much money, and this is where the stream kind of crapped out on me. But he decided he didn't want the offer that we gave him, and he decided to test free agency. So we are now into free agency, and the first guy I went after was AJ Epineza, formerly of the Buffalo Bills. Offered him a 1-year deal worth about $6.8 million altogether between salary and bonus. I also decided to offer Will Dissly a deal as well. At first, I just wanted to back up tight end to Kyle Pitts, and offered him a 2-year deal worth $4 million in salary, $4.2 in bonus altogether. And now we go to evaluations, and AJ Epineza actually agreed to his contract, with Will Dissly still contemplating his contract at the moment. So Epineza most likely will be the starter across from Arnold Ebiketie. And now I'm going to offer a deal to Levante David for 1 year, $1 million, no bonus. I just want to kind of bring in somebody to be a leader in this linebacking core alongside Deion Jones, and I'm probably going to move him to outside linebacker in our 4-3 defense. Also offer a deal to Anthony Schwartz. I just want to get a little bit more competition at receiver beyond what we have currently. And I think Schwartz gives us some extra speed at receiver as well, which we probably need at this point. And then I decided to offer a deal to Mo Alley Cox, just as a contingency plan, just in case things don't work out with Will Dissly. And he seems to be a lot more interested in the offer we gave Dissly, which is 2 years, $4 million bonus, $4.2 million in salary. I also decided to sign Matt Filer to kind of be a backup at left guard. I feel like our offensive line as a whole could use some work, so bringing Filer, who's a veteran, in could be a good move. I also decided to sign Cornelius Lucas to be a backup at left tackle now that we no longer have Jake Matthews. And since Holiday struggled a bit last season, I also decided to get some depth at center. Austin Blythe is who I decided to go after. Again, Tyler Biadasz wasn't great last season, so Blythe could end up being a starter at some point. Bill Johnson ends up signing with the Chargers, so we end up missing out on him. I was thinking about bringing him back, but I didn't have a lot of things to offer him because free agency is busted in this game. So in order to get some competition at linebacker, I signed Khaleke Hudson, or I offered Khaleke Hudson 1 year, $1.1 million in salary, $5,000 in bonus. And then after reviewing the contracts, we end up getting Alley Cox. We end up signing Schwartz. We get Filer, and we get Hudson and Blythe and Lucas as well. So we got most of the guys we offered. Dissly and David are still reviewing their contracts, and I decided to offer Brendan Riley a contract as well, who is familiar with the scheme that we're going to be running this year. And I also wanted to get some depth at safety with Jason McVay gone, so I go after Clinton Dix, the former Packer. And then Monty Rice hasn't really gotten many deals, so I decided to offer him a team-friendly deal to see if he'll come back on that. Not sure if he will. Another guy offered a contract to is Sterling Weatherford, who knows the Tampa 2 defense. So I'm just really getting bodies that know our defense. And then to replace Grady Jarrett and to team him up with Jeffrey Simmons once again, I go after former Titan Tears Hart. And this might trigger some Falcons fans, but I decide that I want to try one more time with Takk McKinley, see what he can do in this defense as a backup. Tart decides to sign, as does McKinley and Rice. So we have definitely gotten a lot of the guys that we offered contracts to. Clinton Dix also signed, as did Sterling Weatherford. And basically we brought in a lot of guys that we offered contracts to. Now we'll look at a few of the former Falcons that were in free agency. Jake Matthews ends up signing with the Commanders to be their left tackle. So good luck to him over there. Grady Jarrett decides to sign inside the division and go to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So we're going to be seeing him twice this season, and he's going to be looking for revenge. Adetokunbo Ogundeji ends up going to the Giants. So I'm sure he's going to be a backup over there and not really contribute too much, but we'll see. And then, of course, Bill Johnson went to the Chargers, as I mentioned earlier. So now we go to the draft, and I actually did a few notes on players in the draft this year because I knew the draft was going to be a little bit more important to us than it was the past few seasons. And one guy that I really was interested in bringing in was Jeremy Brackens. I know that with Ebiketie and Epineza at end, it looks like we're pretty good at end, but I wanted to bring Brackens in because a lot of people mocked him to us, and he ended up being a normal dev, so that was kind of disappointing already. And I'm not quite sure he's going to develop into being a good player. So now into the second round, I decided to look at a few different guys. Marco McLeod was one that really stuck out to me. He's a good fit for our defense as well. But he ended up not being great athletically, or at least as great as I wanted him to be. And he's another normal dev. And you guys are really going to see a trend here. I'm clearly not very good at drafting in this game, which is why I thank God that I could actually get the guys that I offer contracts to in free agency because, this is a rough draft. So I decided to trade down in the third round, and I decided that I wanted to trade down with the Green Bay Packers because, in my opinion, they gave me the best offer out of anybody. There were some decent offers, but the Packers offered me 3 draft picks, all in this draft, a 3rd, a 6th, and a 7th. And they literally weren't too many picks behind me with their 3rd round pick, so I feel like this is a heist right here. And we decided that we're going to draft Braxton Sasser, the center out of California, and he ended up being okay, I would say. Like, he wasn't awful, especially for this late in the draft, even though it's like midway through the draft, not really late, you know what I mean. So now we go to the 4th round, 24th pick of the 4th round, and I decided to go after Bernard Hatchett, who is a power back, and I'm really not even sure if Tyler Algier is going to be here after this season. He is in the final years of his contract, so Hatchett will probably be a replacement for him, so Ronald Jones and James Cook don't really have to worry unless he starts going off, but he has pretty good acceleration, as you can see, and his break tackle is an A, which is always good. So we'll have to see what he does in preseason before we really make a decision as far as that goes. Now we go into the 5th round, and at this point, I'm not really sure who to pick, to be completely honest with you. But I found Kendrick Golston, left tackle out of Buffalo, who is another guy who, I don't know if he's like a huge fit for our team, but he actually had a pretty solid combine for the most part, as you can see. And again, I'm not really sure how DeMarcus Holiday is going to do at left tackle. So Golston is the pick here in the 5th round. And he's another normal dev. We're getting nothing but normal devs, as you can see. So now we head into the 6th round. And again, it's just getting harder and harder to really find players that are going to be worth it here. But I go after George Knox, right outside linebacker out of Ferris State. And his acceleration is pretty good. Everything else is kind of meh. And then we have our second 6th round pick here from the Packers now. And I decided to go after Kevin Richardson, who is a defensive tackle out of Buffalo. So we're getting a lot of Buffalo guys here. So next up, we're going to go after Bobby Knox, a receiver out of Florida International. And I had one more pick, but I simmed it because I didn't realize I had it. But yeah, as you can see, a lot of these guys are pretty underwhelming. Jeremy Brackens actually ended up being a good pick. He's a 76 overall, and hopefully he can develop into being somebody who we can depend on across from Ebiketie. But we'll see if he can win the job from Epineza. And now we look at Mario McLeod, our 2nd round pick out of Southern Arkansas. And he ended up being a 63 overall, so this was a big whiff by me. And again, I'm clearly not very good at drafting. I mean, he has 73 tackling, which isn't very good. And then his zone and man coverage are really disappointing as well. So now we look at Braxton Sasser, our 3rd round pick, and he wasn't much better than McLeod. Probably still would have been a better pick either way, but this man has good strength, but everything else as far as that goes, run blocking is okay, pass blocking is not very good. I mean, impact blocking is great at 85 though, so hopefully we can just develop him, but I'm not liking what I'm seeing from him so far. Now looking at Bernard Hackett, he's actually a 69 overall. Nice. So maybe he could develop into being a solid backup. I mean, he has solid core attributes, as you can see. Break tackle is at an 81, which is really good. Trucking's at an 82. But we'll have to see if he can compete with Algier for that starting power back role. Kendrick Golston ended up being a 64 overall. And I'll be honest with you, I don't think he's a good prospect at left tackle at all, so we're probably going to move him elsewhere. But 66 pass blocking for a left tackle, that's not what we're looking for at all. George Knox, the 6th round pick, ended up being a 60 overall. I mean, he fits the defense at least, but that's about all I can really say about him. And Kevin Richards, the D tackle out of Buffalo, ended up being a 64. He's a 62 run stopper. And not like the best fit for our defense, but 85 strength is pretty good. But he just has to develop everything else in his game if he really wants to stick with this roster. And then Bobby Knox ended up being a 64 overall. He has a 64 playmaker, so he's a good fit for the offense. And he has really good speed. But the route running needs to be a whole lot better before he really sees any playing time. But you'll definitely see him a lot in the preseason. And then the CPU picked up Tremaine Brooks, strong safety out of Clemsucks. And lo and behold, you let the CPU pick one pick for you, and it's a hidden dev. 62 overall in run support. And obviously there's no expectation that he's going to start over Derwin James or anything like that. But 77 pursuits pretty good for a 7th rounder. And we'll have to see what he does. So our first 3 preseason games all will be in their own video. We're going to take on the Chargers at home, and then we're going to go on the road to take on the Colts and then the Jets. So now looking at our regular season schedule, we open up against the Rams and the Bucks, both on the road, the Bucks being a Monday night game. Then we go home to take on the Panthers and then the Patriots. Week 5, we head on the road to take on the Dolphins. Then we play the Packers at home before our Week 7 bye. Then we take on the Saints on Monday Night Football on the road. Then we play against Tampa. Week 10, we take on Arizona on Sunday night. Then Week 11, we take on the Colts, then the Niners in Week 12, then the Seahawks in Week 13 on Sunday night. Then we have the Bills Monday night in Week 14, then the Giants Week 15 on the road on Sunday Night Football. So 3 straight primetime games there before we take on the Saints in Week 16, then the Jets on Thursday Night Football Week 17, and then we end the season in Carolina against the Panthers in Week 18. So looking at our depth chart offensively, and we really don't have any real changes outside of Allie Cox being the backup and just depth everywhere. And then Schwartz, of course, being a backup at receiver. But really no huge differences. Then defensively, I'm going to move Levante David to right outside linebacker over Khaleke Hudson. But outside of that, and then AJ Epineza starting, and just us running a Tampa 2 in general, there's not too much different from this defense. A lot of the same starters. And then, as you can see, D'Angelo Malone's going to get some playing time during passing downs and whatnot. And then, of course, we still have Algier, Rojo in their roles. We still have Fenton as a slot corner. Not too much has changed for the most part. So next up, we got our preseason as we take on the Chargers in the first game, then the Colts and the Jets. And then after that episode, we get into year 4 of the franchise. And the goal is to get back to the Super Bowl, of course.